Hello, this is Clay Morgan from claymorganonline.com, here with a short but powerful course on how to gain influence through communication. And you see the subtitle there, it's 5 rules for speaking in public. So we'll cover these 5 rules that I believe are at the heart of everything we should do when trying to connect with others. We'll also talk about what speaking in public actually means. It's probably a little bit broader than a lot of people assume. And building profitable relationships. And again, what does profitable mean? Hopefully we're making some money, but that might not be the end of the story if we're doing it well. So you can see a bit of an intro to the 3 ways we'll come at this topic here in this short course series. But there it is. If you want to gain influence, you have to be able to connect with others. And if you're going to do that, to build relationships like that, you're going to need to be able to communicate. You may think that you're a terrible communicator. Maybe connecting with people has always been really difficult. Or perhaps you're real savvy in this area. We all can continually improve. Every situation is different. And so it's not so much just about having a prepared speech or something like that. It's just learning to get more comfortable in any situation. And that's what I teach, and that's what this course is going to help you do. So speaking in public is the key. And again, we got to talk about what that means. But first, let me just introduce the 5 rules. Now here's a really abbreviated version. Yeah, the 5 rules of engagement for influence. But if I could distill them down into the smallest form, I would say it's be empathetic. We'll talk about empathy and what that means and why it matters. Listen to others. What does that mean? We're going to talk about listening for sure. How to create healthy communication environments. Boy, if you could do that, half the work is done. And how to build those bridges to others. And finally, how to manage yourself. I believe if you can take care of these 5 elements, you're going to have success in connecting with people and then in gaining influence that you seek. So let's start off here with the first module. We'll call it speaking and influence. What is the connection? Well, what are speaking skills? It's not just speaking from a stage. I already kind of alluded to that, but I'm not talking about public speaking only in the sense that you get up on a platform and you deliver some kind of a presentation. That's part of it. But what about networking? What about encounters with somebody at work, maybe if you have a day job? What about a chance encounter in a coffee shop or a line or at an event? You are using your speaking skills every time you're engaging someone else. And there's nonverbal skills we'll talk about in Module 2, but this is the key to connecting with others. Everything you hope to achieve comes down to your ability to influence others. So, if that's the case, how you present yourself, how you network, if you're in sales, and let's face it, I mean, if we have a message to share, we still need to use some selling techniques. These are all parts of speaking skills. So they're tied to how we communicate, which means they're tied to whether or not we can gain influence and build influence. Well, it's all about how you present yourself. So what does it require? Well, you're going to have to overcome resistance. In some cases, if we're talking about just public speaking, I understand that there is a fear. I have felt it and I still do. You're not human if you don't get nervous about speaking and or performing in front of other people. But you know, a lot of people get stopped before they even begin. There is a belief some people have about themselves, maybe you're one of them, that you are not the kind of person that could walk into a room and connect with others, that you're not really good in groups or crowds. And there's a lot to say about resistance. Stephen Pressfield wrote a famous book called The War of Art a few years ago, and it's all about resistance and overcoming it. In some cases, you just need motivation, but in some cases, there really is a well-founded fear or anxiety that you have. And I just want to encourage you that if you have ever had a pleasant conversation with another human, then you can do this. You can communicate your way into healthy relationships that are based in business even, that accomplish really what you're trying to accomplish. And if you think you can just do it with a really great product, or you're maybe an artist, a creative, and your art is just going to speak for itself, there are special people who live in that reality. But for the vast majority of us, we have to be able to go out there and make connections and share our work directly with other people. So communication is the bridge between human interactions and these actual real connections. So two things real quickly that we'll talk about here. There is a great scholar named Amy Cuddy. She's from Harvard. She gave a famous TED Talk a few years ago where she talked about how to use body language and how to kind of become something that you did not perceive yourself as being. And when she started to back this with science, she said there's two things really that you have to very quickly earn in any encounter. And those two things are trust and respect. And the way to think about that, this is how brains have functioned for as long as human brains have been a thing. When someone encounters you, the very first thing they need to know, whether they are consciously processing this thought or not, is, will this person harm me? Will they hurt me? Can they hurt me? How can they hurt me? I mean, it just goes back to survival instinct, really. And that's why this first part of our brain that processes new information is what a lot of people call our lizard brain, this limbic system. But the idea is basically we wonder, who is this new person? You know, at a lower level, are they going to annoy me? Are they going to waste my time? But basically, are they going to do me any bad? And the other side of that is we have to gain respect. And respect is more about, how can this person help me? Can this person help me? So if we're honest about human nature, really that's kind of how we process things. That's how we process interactions. So as we go out there and try to encounter other people, we have to be trustworthy, let them know right away we're not some kind of danger, we're not there to waste their time or energy, and that they can respect us, that in fact we can help them. And that's what it's all about in gaining influence, because we're looking to find out what people are struggling with and then to share with them how our work helps them solve the problems they are currently dealing with. And that's the formula, that's the solution. Easier said than done? Maybe. But are you safe, and can you help? So my little flow here is that communication is the heart that shows that we are professional. And professionalism is how we prove that we are credible. And if people think we are credible professionals, then they trust us, they respect us, we gain influence in their mind. So I talked for a long time about communication and what is the most important part of communication. Everything comes down to that. And really, I say that number one, the most important trait for connecting with others is empathy. Empathy is understanding how other people feel, how they view the world. When they experience something, what is it like for them? You may be familiar with the difference between sympathy and empathy. So you can sympathize with somebody without understanding what they're going through. This happens a lot of times if someone goes through a tragedy. We have not experienced that tragedy, but we just feel for them so strongly. We sympathize. But when you really understand what another person is going through, then you are empathizing. And that's really powerful, especially if you can communicate that to someone else. And especially if you're communicating it because you really care about helping to limit the frustration or pain that person is feeling. So it might be that you are a musician and your music can comfort people. It might be that you have a product that helps somebody do their work more easily than they currently are. Because maybe once upon a time you struggled to figure out how to do something, and now that you have, you can show them. But you could also say, oh, I understand the frustration you feel. That's empathy. So this is a massive topic, right? I mean, we don't just figure out how to become empathetic overnight. It's very instinctive. But I have 3 steps that I think are practical ways. So we value others equally, regardless of status. There is no favorite playing. In other words, we don't just go out into the world trying to gain influence by looking for important people, key people, those who matter most, and ignoring the rest. And that means we have to be sincere, not condescending. Condescension is just a $5 word for acting like you're better than somebody, for feeling like you're better than somebody. So we have to be authentic and sincere. We want to go into encounters really trying to see people equally and to understand what it is that they are going through. And that means we have to seek meaning in every encounter. We don't just look past people if we want to really be successful, because it's not just about gaining influence by connecting with two people who are quote unquote important in the field. It's about really seeing every person. And I'll tell you, you never know where the next key connection is going to come from. There are a lot of unassuming folks out there who could be major influencers anyway. So even if you are just taking the route of self-preservation, be careful who you overlook. So empathy is everything. How do people view the world, and what do they feel, and how can you help them? The second most important part, I would say, of this whole equation is listening, but specifically active listening, and more specifically, healthy active listening. Have you ever heard a speaker give a presentation or something like this where they're giving a talk that they have definitely given a lot of times, and it sounds good, it might even be really good, it might be really polished, but it doesn't quite connect in a personal way. It doesn't really speak to anybody that's in the room. It's just a speech that they give and they collect a check perhaps. You can always tell at a special event whether a clergy person really has a relationship with, let's say that there's a wedding. You can tell if it's a priest, for example, or a pastor who knows the bride and groom, or if they're just kind of saying the words. The same thing happens in business speaking. You know, this is like a stump speech that somebody's given 400 times in the last 3 years. But it's a lot different when they come into that room and they know some things about the people there. And equally, if someone is tone deaf because they just are not listening to what is really needed, that's frustrating. It doesn't land, it doesn't connect emotionally as well. So you have to know your audience and you have to adapt. You have to be flexible. And the easiest way to do that is to listen to the questions they're asking. So if you're going into a room, what can you learn about those people? If you're going into a networking event, what do you know about professionals who are at networking events? What kind of questions are they asking? And the easiest way to find out is to walk up to somebody and just ask them, who are you? What are you working on? What kind of work do you do? What do you struggle with? Here's what I do. Can I help you? You know, asking questions is a quick way to get there, because everyone has a story. If we listen to the stories people are sharing, we're going to hear the questions they are asking. And if you can become a person who is effective at helping people find a happy ending to their story, or even just an answer to one of their questions, you're going to win. You're going to become influential because you're helping people. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are out there, they know they're struggling with something and they don't even know how to explain it. They can't quite articulate what the struggle is. And I do a lot of work for corporate America as a consultant. If you can help people even frame the question they've been trying to ask for a long time, that's really powerful right there. And they say, yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I didn't even realize what I was trying to figure out. And then how much more influential if you can help them answer the question that you just gave them language for. But here's the caveat. You can be a really attentive listener, and you're only listening so that you can get information that you can then use to manipulate people. And we've all dealt with folks like this. It is not good to listen in order to manipulate. And that's why I say that all of these articles and books about active listening, they have to provide the caveat that it needs to be from a healthy mindset. And we're here to help people. Because if you use these things we're talking about and you learn how to become a stronger interpersonal communicator and you begin to connect with people, you can really use that like a superpower. And we have to be careful not to take advantage of people. That's the deal. That's the deal. When I help somebody learn how to connect with others, I want them to use it for good, and we want to put good into the world. So those are some things to kick us off here. That's how communication connects to influence, because it's about connecting with other people. Speaking skills are not just something you use from a stage. Influence is something that requires belief that you can get out there and connect with others, and that we're finding ways to help people trust and respect us because we are caring about them and what they need. We're trying to see the world through their eyes and ears, hear it through their ears, I guess. And we want to value everybody equally. We don't want to look past anybody. We always want to be sincere, not condescending. So, who is your audience? Some action steps for this module are very simple. Practice empathy. Try to really do what a lot of authors do, especially a lot of fiction writers. Really look at a person. Maybe it's a person on the street. Maybe it's somebody you already know. Try to imagine, what are they thinking? What is their daily experience like? What would you do if you had to write a scene, a one-page scene about them? What would they think and feel? And listen. Listen to someone until you identify the questions they have. You could even do this overhearing some conversations. You might just hear on the subway or a bus or at the grocery store a couple of people talking, and you hear someone sharing a frustration. But if you're even smarter about it, go to where your audience is, maybe online, and look at the kinds of things they're saying in comments or the kind of things they're sharing on social media. What are they struggling to answer? And the more you listen, the more you'll know what the questions are, and the more well-positioned you'll be to provide answers. So that's all for Module 1. We'll be back with Module 2.